face. Shut up and smile. Don't spread your legs. I can do that, but no one knows me, no one ever will. If I don't say something, if I just lie still, would I be a monster, scare them all away? If I let them hear what I have to say, I can't keep quiet. No, 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 I can't keep quiet. No, 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 a one-woman riot. No, 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 I can't keep quiet.
Me too. I was silent after I spoke up at a young age about a grown-up game that was being played, and the images didn't go away, only I did. Their daycare went on business as usual. I was silent after I tried to explain the large hand wrapping around my bottom. The man in position to protect me asked what I was wearing, so I put on more clothes for covering. I was silent the day my sister said she'd been raped repeatedly. I didn't understand the story or how to look at authority, so I looked away. Quietly, turned inside myself, not knowing what was safe. I was silent, even in the moment when I could have said that thing happened to me too. Instead, everything rearranged. Maybe this is just normal. I found false control in just saying okay, because if I didn't say no, then he couldn't take it away. I withstood a few more bruises out of fear. I was afraid. I lied because no one will believe what I say was ingrained. Then one day I yelled. Until I ran, until I fought, until I found myself isolating behind walls of confusion, anger, layers, and even more silence of my truth. Like a mad scientist, I studied, I grew, I became stronger mentally. I saw others being happy, and I looked at myself in the mirror to find my own identity. And then I met a woman who saw me. She reached out her hand and said, "This space is safe for talking." So I said, "Hello." She was pleased. In that space, I eventually revealed mysteries. Find your place to unweb those mysteries, and then please just speak. Today, I tell the story. I rejoice in the victory. I am no longer silently walking. I speak. I stand up. I say yes because I mean it. And I say no with full power behind what that stands for. And my ability to stand, for I am standing amongst many strengths. We are victors. I stand with women all around the world who embrace their story and their knowing. Even a little girl like me can grow up and live out her wildest dreams. Even a teenage girl like me can step into the possibility of living abundantly, safely, securely. Even a young woman like me can find love and grace. I'm even pondering trusting. It's a journey. I will speak. I will use my voice. I will continue to rise and reach. I honor the memories that feed my strength. Use them to fuel this journey into destiny. Give generously because of we are hand in hand building new land. And it is time to claim our temples. We too have risen. I am a woman, proud to be a woman. I am not lesser. I am not your property. I am not ashamed to say that this happened to me. I am no longer shrinking from my calling. I embody the rise of feminine expressions, embody the heart of a lioness that fights for her cub. My proverbial cub has grown strong since the day I gave metaphorical birth. My business thrives. I read to fill my mind. I wear jeans from time to time and dresses when I want to feel the winds ride. My voice is heard. I dance and set necessary boundaries as I heal and I learn. Free bird, we must begin within. Claiming our brilliance, claiming the strength and the learning, finding our voices and then starting to speak. Standing in the gap with someone who is being hurt, but also those who are hurting. Redefining our imagery and perceiving ourselves once again as kings and queens. You are a spark of divinity. Let's attach our MeToos to fulfilling our destinies.
We aren't keeping quiet. We aren't smiling. We aren't alone. We're together. We're doing it. A to Z. We're listening to women's voices. We're believing women's voices. We're setting ourselves free. Women and men. Not just women and men. People with different gender identities and sexual orientations, transgender and non-binary people, young people and older people, black and white and brown people, and people with all shades of skin tones in between. We seek the truth in love, even when the truth hurts and is hard, because we can't keep quiet. We can't keep quiet anymore because this ain't heaven help us. This is on us. We are going to transform our lives. This is women and people who identify as women setting ourselves free, because we've been living in a state of emergency way too long. And this is men and people who identify as men setting yourselves free, because you've been living in a big, self-isolating man box way too long. This is my liberation as a woman is tied up with your liberation as a man, and your liberation as a man is tied up with my liberation as a woman. And I'm tired of being scared, and silent, and ashamed. Because, unfortunately, yes, me too.
Me too. Me too.
Stay.
Me too. Me too.
Me too.
Me too.
I was assaulted in public when I was 19 years old. I was sitting on a crowded subway train. A man walked right up in front of me and started saying sexually explicit things. And then he hit me in the face. No one on the train did anything. He started talking to me again, saying offensive and aggressive things to me. When I stood up and walked to the door, he followed me. When I stepped out the door, my sister, who I was meeting that night, was waiting for me on the platform. I hugged her hard and cried and told her what had happened. She held me. She didn't question me. But I can imagine questions popping up in your mind. What were you wearing? Did you fight back? Did you scream? Why didn't you ask for help? If you didn't ask for help, no wonder the people on the train didn't do anything. What were you wearing, Barbara? The questions are just part of the reason women stay quiet. I told my sister because she was right there, right when it happened. And in the following weeks, she helped me face my fear and come up with a strategy. I didn't want to be intimidated by what had happened, so I got rid of the winter coat I had been wearing. I cut my hair. I changed my appearance, hoping that would prevent the man from recognizing me if our paths ever crossed again. I started carrying mace in my pocket or my purse. My sister and I came up with a plan for what I would do if I saw him again, and he did recognize me. And thanks to the MeToo movement today, I'm telling you this story, and I'm less afraid of being blamed for what happened. I understood even back then that the people on the subway might have thought I knew him, that I was in some kind of domestic dispute of sorts. None of my business, they might have thought. That they might not have intervened or interrupted the verbally and physically violent scene playing out right in front of them because they were sorting through the questions and fears in their own minds. I was wearing a shortish skirt. My sister and I were going out dancing together that night. Whatever they were thinking, I was terrified. I felt like unprotected prey in a crowd of people. And afterwards, even worse than what had happened, I felt ashamed. Like I must have done something to deserve it. Like I must have done something wrong. Like maybe I shouldn't have ignored him when he started saying lewd things to me. Like maybe I should have put down the book I was reading and yelled at him. Should I have screamed at him to get away from me? Should I have stood up faster? Should I have hit him back? It's hard to say. Impossible to know. But it's not hard to know why women have waited to speak out or have chosen to stay quiet. Women have consistently been blamed as responsible for what has been done to us, privately and very publicly. In 1991, when Anita Hill finally spoke up, using words I could never repeat from this pulpit, about the ways Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas repeatedly sexually harassed her, the men on the Senate Judiciary Committee blamed her for not coming forward earlier. Senator Arlen Specter asked incredulously, how could you have allowed this kind of reprehensible behavior to go on without doing something about it? We've heard that same question in the trial against Bill Cosby, the allegations against Donald Trump, and following the Bill O'Reilly and Harvey Weinstein disclosures. We didn't report because we knew, or we don't report because we know we often won't be believed. And we aren't movie stars. We, this morning, are the women of this church. Women who have bravely given me their permission to use their names in sharing their stories. When Allison Oleg was in elementary school, she was a top student. Her grades were high, her behavior exemplary, and she was good at sports, too. David was her equal in every way. They were the two top students in Mr. McIntosh's 5th grade class. One day at recess, out on the playground, David ran up to Allison, groped her, and ran away. As he left, she shoved him away, and indignant, went and told her teacher. Her teacher, Mrs. McIntosh, excuse me. Her teacher listened, and Mrs. McIntosh replied, "That can't be true, Allison. David wouldn't do something like that." Allison went home angry, but she didn't tell her parents. Many of us haven't reported because we were taught to expect it would happen. We didn't report because we needed that job or we loved being on that team. Listen to Jill Webb in her own words. I was in junior high school, had just come out of basketball practice and was still in my uniform. As I was walking through the parking lot on the way home, a boy I didn't know came up behind me and ran his fingers between my legs from the front of me to the back. I spun around, and he laughed at me and ran away. I was deeply ashamed and didn't tell anyone about it until the MeToo movement 35 years later. When we have told in the past, and when we still tell today, the consequences are difficult to predict. LaDonna Boyd was working at a major local hospital when her boss started to harass her. She wishes there had been someone to talk to about it then, but since there wasn't, she put the pieces together herself. She read the Wall Street Journal, which was delivered daily to the hospital. She started reading more carefully the stories about women filing sexual harassment cases. She recognized the similarities in the stories she was reading to her own experiences, and she kept a growing file full of articles. By that time, her boss was demanding she have sex with him before she got her paycheck. So she bravely filed a grievance with the hospital's Human Resources Department. When she filed her complaint, hospital staff were dismissive. "We've given you a full benefit package. What are you complaining about?" They actually said. Women colleagues and coworkers said things like, "If you wouldn't wear that lipstick, if you dressed more like a man, you deserved it. You should have just gone along with it." But she had a son, and she didn't want him to grow up in a world where that was allowed to happen. So she sued the hospital for sexual harassment. Hers was one of the earliest sexual harassment cases filed and tried in Tulsa County, finally resolved in federal court. When the case got stalled, her team approached a lawyer from All Souls because of his work with human and civil rights. The new lawyer was able to have the case resolved in her favor, in LaDonna's favor. The hospital offered a sealed settlement, updated their internal policies, celebrated, and then said goodbye to LaDonna's boss, and moved LaDonna to a different department, which she left within weeks. There was no way to stay. There are too many reasons why women have been silent for so long, and for why we still remain silent. Sometimes we don't say anything because we love our church. A woman who was a greeter here at All Souls told me about two different men. She knows them by face, but not by name. She told me about how they have slid their hands down her back too far when exchanging friendly hugs. She told me how horrible it feels, how embarrassing, how disrespectful, how insulting and unsettling it is. She didn't know what to do. She didn't want to make anyone feel bad or get anyone in trouble here. But she does want those men to stop. If they could treat me that way here, in front of their wives, who knows how they treat other women, she told me. The worst thing about this happening in a church, in our church, is that this is the place we come to remember that we're loved. This is the place we come to be reminded that we don't need to be saved by someone else's sacrifice or suffering. This is where we come to experience that we are already saved and safe. This is the place we come to remind ourselves that what we learned in our childhood churches or from the media today about the merits of meekness and the value of violent sacrifice and the idealization of people with power are lies. Dangerous lies. We come to this church to grow more whole by bringing more of who we are with us, not less. We come to be liberated so we can fully express our God-given sexuality in responsible and ethical ways. We don't come to All Souls to be shamed or shunned or punished or picked on, aggressed or traumatized again. So today, because I'm standing in this pulpit, I can say, if it's you and you're hearing this, it's not okay. Examine your own conscience. Sleep on it. Then stop it. Please. When we talked together earlier this week, she told me, when I first started talking to you about this, Barbara, I felt like a victim. But I've shifted now to thinking of myself as a victor. She continued, the MeToo movement is laying out the healing steps we all need to take. We all need to take. Number 1, speak. Number 2, identify the offender. Number 3, insist on your truth. Number 4, find people who believe you and who believe in you. These steps are just the beginning of how we can transform our families and our communities, our churches, and the world around us. The good news, the really, really good news this morning is that men here at All Souls have already organized themselves and they are doing the work. The curriculum that has been created here with help from Domestic Violence Intervention Services or DVIS staff is inspiring beyond belief. The courage of our men to examine their past behavior and to turn their gaze inward, to begin to take responsibility for their actions and their thoughts is healing beyond belief.
Me too. I have noticed silence has been in my own, and I have failed to hold them and myself accountable for that silence. But no more. I have found my voice.
Me too, for knowing all too well of my complicity in the objectification of women all across social media and in real life.
Me too, for benefiting from a culture where women are reduced to property offered up to save men's lives, allowing their sexual abuse to continue through institutional silence and their economic abuse to continue through lower wages.
Me too, for being insufficiently critical within a culture which objectifies women, which profits from young female bodies driven to unnatural states of health and commercialized product poses.
Me too, for I know all too well how young boys are also victimized by a culture which is silent and silencing regarding their sexual abuse.
Me too, for my silence in locker rooms, where talk degrades women's intelligence and giftedness, and by reducing them to mere body parts.
Me too. Not just for my silence, but for my participation in the objectification of women at various points in my life, particularly when alone with other men. Yes, even me too.
For women, The MeToo movement means we won't be shamed anymore, or thought of as less than men anymore. Not in men's eyes, or in our own eyes, or in each other's eyes. For the men who join this movement, MeToo means men won't be shamed into believing their masculinity depends on hiding their emotions, or being physically strong, or making money, or on their sexual conquests. Men won't be shamed into being less compassionate than they are. Anais Nin, the great writer, wrote, "Life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. Transforming this reality will require all of us to be very courageous." When I dared go back to that same subway station a month after that man attacked me, he did recognize me, and he followed me. I got off at the next stop, as my sister had coached me to do, and he got off too. I felt like I was in a really bad movie as I hopped off and on trains trying to get rid of him, running through underground tunnels and up the flights of steep stairs into the dark night alone. I lost him, and I never, ever went back to that subway station again. From then on, I walked a bit further to catch the train at another station. And I've never told anyone besides my sister and my husband that part of the story until today. My liberation as a woman is tied up with your liberation as a man. And your liberation as a man is tied up with my liberation as a woman. And the liberation of our transgender and non-binary and gender fluid friends and family members is tied up with cisgendered men and women breaking free of our habitual ways of deflecting, dismissing, and denying gender-based violence, control, and abuse when we see it, when we do it, and when we experience it. We need each other to do this. We need each other to move beyond MeToo. And as a woman with some authority, I know that I too need to be held accountable for how I wield my power. Sadly, women are not innately more ethical than men. Allison's teacher failed to use her power to protect her female student or students. Who knows how many others there were, and what their gender was, for that matter. And I know that women are not morally superior to men. LaDonna's colleagues and coworkers not only abandoned her, they failed to use their influence for the good of all women working at that hospital. And up until this very moment, I wasn't sure how to use my authority to transform reality for our own All Souls volunteers and staff. If the world is going to change, we're going to have to change too. Hurting people, including hurting women, hurt people. Sometimes we hurt ourselves. Sometimes we hurt our daughters and our sons, our children. Sometimes we hurt our employees. So I'm committed to my own healing, and to yours, and to ours. Media today is making it harder, not easier. Sadly, the statistics today are as horrifying as they were when I was a young woman. So it's time to stop shaming and shunning each other. It's time to listen to and believe each other's stories, because I can imagine men and women in this congregation having conversations we have never had before. I can imagine that. Can you? Yeah. We need to. It's time. It's time. It's time. About 4 months before the president's Access Hollywood tape was released, another message went viral. An unnamed woman who had been sexually assaulted while unconscious wrote a letter and read it aloud in court to her attacker, a Stanford athlete. I read it to you now as if they were my own words. To girls everywhere, I am with you. On nights when you feel alone, I am with you. When people doubt you or dismiss you, I am with you. I fought every day for you, so never stop fighting. I believe you. You are important. You are untouchable. You are beautiful. You are to be valued, respected, undeniably, every minute of every day. You are powerful, and nobody can take that away from you. We are powerful, and we are not alone. We are so powerful together. Imagine with me as we invite more people to be a part of this conversation. Imagine as more of us speak up and listen, what kind of impact it could have on us and beyond us. Imagine. As you imagine, and as we allow ourselves to be healed and transformed by the love present here among us now, this love beyond belief, I'd like to invite you now to participate in a healing ritual. You're invited to come forward in a moment to drop a rock into the clear water. Your rock could be for you or for someone you love, for someone you care about, for anyone who's been impacted by sexual violence in any way. And as our rocks settle on the bottom together, the healing waters will rise along with our voices and carry us forward together into a more just, free, and loving world. I invite you to please come forward.
Comfort me,
comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me, oh my soul. Speak for me. Speak for me. Speak for me. Speak for me, oh my soul. Speak for me. Speak for me.